James was the kind of man who had grown used to silence, the kind that filled every corner of his small apartment like a heavy fog. He was 38, successful on paper, yet when he came home at night there was no one waiting for him. No laughter, no conversation, not even the soft sound of another human being moving about. Just silence, and the dull hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. One Friday evening, after a long work week, James sat at his computer with a bottle of cheap beer and a feeling he couldn't quite shake, a longing that pressed against his chest. On impulse, he typed into a search bar, "rescue dogs near me." He scrolled aimlessly until one picture stopped him cold. She wasn't beautiful in the traditional sense. In fact, the little brown mutt looked scrappy, with one ear bent permanently sideways and eyes that seemed far too big for her small head. Her name was listed simply as Molly. Adoption fee, $78.03. It felt oddly specific, oddly small. James hovered his mouse over the screen, debating. He wasn't sure if he was ready, if he even knew how to take care of a dog. But something in Molly's eyes made him feel a broken bar scene, like she understood his loneliness because she carried her own. 2 days later, he walked into the shelter. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant and wet fur. When they brought Molly out, her thin tail wagged uncertainly. She wasn't overly friendly. I didn't leap into his arms like in the movie, but she leaned against his leg, as if testing whether he could be trusted. And that was enough. $78.03 later, Molly was his. The first few weeks were hard. Molly came with scarce emotional ones. She barked at strangers, flinched at sudden movements, and sometimes refused to eat. James wondered if he'd made a mistake. More than once, he sat on the floor next to her bed, whispering softly into the quiet, "It's okay, girl, I'm not going anywhere." Slowly, she began to believe him. One evening, as James watched TV, he felt a warm weight press against his leg. Molly had climbed onto the couch, curling beside him with a sigh. For the first time in years, James felt something stir inside him, a comfort, companionship. A piece of his loneliness began to crack. But the real turning point came one rainy night. James was walking Molly when she tugged hard at the leash, pulling him toward the shadow under the bus stop. At first he resisted, annoyed, until he realized what she had found. It was a boy, no older than 9, shivering under the shelter with nothing but a thin hoodie. James knelt down. "Hey, buddy, you okay?" The boy's eyes darted nervously. "Yeah, I missed the bus." His voice was thin, fragile. Something about it didn't sit right. After a few questions, James learned the truth. The boy's name was Tyler. He didn't miss the bus. He ran away from foster care. James called the authorities, heart heavy as the police took Tyler back. But the boy kept looking back at James and Molly as he was led away, his eyes pleading. That night, James couldn't sleep. He saw himself and Tyler alone, searching for someone to notice him. Weeks passed, but fate wasn't finished weaving their story. Through a chance encounter at a community event, James saw Tyler again, up this time with a caseworker. The boy broke into a grin when he spotted Molly and ran straight to her, wrapping his arms around the dog's neck. Molly, usually wary, licked his face as if she'd been waiting for him. Something clicked that day. James began volunteering at the foster center, always bringing Molly along. Tyler would light up when they arrived, and over time, what started as weekly visits became something deeper, a bond James hadn't expected. He began to consider the unthinkable, adoption. It wasn't easy. The process was long, full of background checks, interviews, and doubts whispered in James's ear by people who thought a single man with no parenting experience had no business taking in a child. He second-guessed himself almost daily. Could he really be a father? Could he give Tyler the life he deserved? But every time he thought about giving up, he remembered Malia, the skittish, broken dog who slowly learned to trust him. If he could love her into healing, maybe he could do the same for Tyler. After months of paperwork, home visits, and waiting, the day finally came. James signed the papers. Tyler was officially his son. When the caseworker left them alone in the living room, Tyler sat on the couch, staring down at his shoes. James knelt in front of him. "Hey, kiddo, I know this is scary, but I want you to know a broken bar, you're home now, for good." Tyler looked up, eyes wet, and whispered, "Do you promise?" James felt his throat tighten. He reached out and pulled the boy into his arms. "I promise." Molly, as if sealing the moment, jumped onto the couch and pressed herself against them both. From that day on, the apartment wasn't silent anymore. It was filled with the sound of laughter, of footsteps, of a dog's happy bark. There were challenges, late-night homework struggles, Tyler's nightmares from his past, moments when James doubted himself, but together, they figured it out. They became a family. And every time James looked at Molly, curled up at Tyler's side, he thought about that number, $78.03. That was the price tag for Molly, but what she gave him: a son, a family, a love he never thought he'd have. Sometimes the smallest decisions, the smallest amounts, change everything. The message: family doesn't always come the way you expect. Sometimes it costs $78.03. Sometimes it comes with scars and fears. But if you open your heart, if you stay, if you love patiently, what you get in return is priceless.